The eggs were perfect, just how Jake liked them. Scrambled hard, no trace of runny yolk. Emily slid the plate across the table with a smile that could have sold real estate, but her eyes were cold, sharp as a Seattle winter. Then came the envelope, pushed toward him like a casual afterthought, its weight poisoning the morning air. Jake Collins, a 45-year-old logistics manager from Seattle, sat in the sunlit kitchen of their Capitol Hill home. The toast was lightly buttered, the coffee black and unsweetened, exactly as he'd taken it for 20 years. Emily, his wife of 18, looked flawless. Blonde hair tucked neatly behind her ear, a cream-colored dress that screamed boutique chic, and nails freshly manicured in pale pink. She'd gone all out for this breakfast, and for a fleeting second, Jake wondered if the couple's therapy had finally cracked her polished exterior. Maybe she was trying to rebuild what they'd lost. But that hope died when she spoke. "Don't freak out, Jake," she said, her voice syrupy, like she was soothing a tantrum-prone child. "It's just formalities. My lawyer says I'm entitled to support, after everything I gave up for us." She sipped her mimosa, the orange juice catching the light as her words landed like a sucker punch. Jake didn't touch the envelope right away. It sat there, bleeding implication across the oak table, its crisp white edges mocking the warmth of the meal. He noticed the details. The faint smudge of bronzer on her wrist, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes, the nervous tuck of her hair, a habit she'd had since their dating days. This wasn't a conversation. It was a performance, and Emily had rehearsed her lines. He picked up the envelope, fingers grazing the paper as if it might burn. Inside was a legal document, cold and precise. A claim for spousal support, a chunk of his pension, half the equity in the house he'd paid off working double shifts through Puget Sound's brutal winters. The numbers stared back at him. Demands for backdated compensation, as if her years of yoga classes and wine nights were billable hours. Jake read the first page twice, not because he didn't understand, but because he needed to believe it was real. Emily watched him, her head tilted, that same sugary calm plastered across her face. "I didn't want to blindside you," she said, as if waiting until after coffee was a kindness. Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't explode. He didn't throw the plate or shout. Instead, he asked, "What's his name?" His voice was low, steady, like he was confirming a delivery order. Emily blinked, caught off guard. "What?" she said, her fingers pausing mid-sip. "Your lawyer," Jake clarified, eyes locked on hers. "What's his name?" A flicker of hesitation crossed her face, but she recovered quickly. "Richard Clark," she said, too fast, too smooth. "He's one of the best." Jake nodded, folding the envelope and setting it back on the table. "That's so?" he said, his tone unreadable. Emily tilted her head, studying him. "You okay?" she asked, her voice laced with fake concern. Jake smiled, just enough to unsettle her. "Yeah," he said, "just thinking how small the world is." Her brows knitted, confusion breaking through her mask. "What do you mean?" she pressed, but Jake was already standing, rinsing his plate in the sink. He didn't answer, didn't need to. Inside his head, gears clicked into place like a well-oiled lock. Richard Clark. The name wasn't just familiar, it was a warning shot. Clark was a divorce shark, the kind who chewed through marriages and spat out settlements. But Jake knew something Emily didn't. Clark's ex-wife, Lisa Thorne. Lisa was a legend in Seattle's legal circles, a lawyer so sharp she could cut through lies with a glance. Jake had met her on a disaster relief logistics board, where she mapped out supply chains while others scrambled. She didn't cry after storms. She tracked them, planned for them, and filed permits before the rain stopped. Lisa had been through Clark's shredder and come out stronger, her scars forged into weapons. Jake dried his hands on a towel, the plan already forming. Emily sat at the table, frowning now, her mimosa forgotten. She expected him to rage, to beg, to flip the damn table. But Jake had learned long ago, when your enemy hands you their battle plan, you don't charge. You wait. You let them think they've won. He didn't go to work that day. Instead, he climbed into his pickup, parked in the driveway of their cul-de-sac, and sat there, engine off, keys dangling in the ignition. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where people waved but didn't talk. Jake wasn't grieving. He was cataloging. Emily's words replayed in his mind. Everything I gave up for us. My lawyer says I'm entitled. Those weren't her phrases. They were legal posturing wrapped in marital guilt. She'd already decided he was a paycheck, a mark to be fleeced. Jake pulled out his phone, scrolled to T for Thorn, and hesitated. He hadn't spoken to Lisa in over a year, just board meetings and the occasional nod at fundraisers. But he remembered her voice, clipped and alert, like she was always halfway through solving a crisis. He hit call. "Lisa, it's Jake Collins," he said when she picked up. "Got a strange one for you." Her response was instant, no pleasantries. "You okay?" she asked, her tone bracing for bad news. "Emily's filing for spousal support," Jake said. "Says she sacrificed her life for me. Her lawyer's Richard Clark." Silence. Then the creak of her office chair, the sound of a legal pad sliding across a desk. "Clark," Lisa repeated, the name heavy, like a stone dropped in still water. "I see." Jake leaned back in the driver's seat. "I think it'd be poetic," he said slowly, "if you were the one to represent me." Another pause, but this time he heard it, the faint edge of a grin in her silence. "Jake," she said, "I don't just want this case. I need it. That bastard's been overdue for a reckoning. And your wife just handed me the match." Jake exhaled, the first real breath he'd taken all morning. Emily thought she was playing chess. She didn't know she just walked into a game where Lisa Thorne wrote the rules, and Jake was ready to watch the board burn. Lisa Thorne's office smelled of coffee and old leather, a fortress of dark wood and legal tomes in downtown Seattle. Jake sat across from her, the city's gray skyline framed by a window that didn't open. She didn't waste time on small talk. "Emily thinks she's got you cornered," Lisa said, her voice like a blade wrapped in silk. "We let her believe it. Then we dismantle her." Jake nodded, his hands folded, still processing the morning's betrayal. Emily's words, "Everything I gave up for us," echoed in his head, each syllable a lie polished to gleam. The envelope, now tucked in his jacket, felt heavier than it should. Lisa leaned forward, her gray suit sharp against the muted room. "Richard Clark's good," she said. "But he's arrogant, loves the spotlight, hates the details. That's where we'll bury him." Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, held Jake's. "And Emily? She's already digging her own grave. We just need to hand her the shovel." Lisa wasn't just any lawyer. At 42, she'd built a reputation in Seattle's legal circles as a tactician who didn't just win cases. She rewrote the battlefield. Jake had seen her in action on the Disaster Relief Board, where she turned bureaucratic chaos into streamlined supply chains while others floundered. She'd been married to Clark once, a detail she mentioned only once years ago over a fundraiser beer. "He taught me how to fight dirty," she'd said, her smile thin. "Then I learned how to fight smart." Now that history was Jake's weapon. "First step," Lisa said, sliding a legal pad across her desk. "We play weak. Agree to mediation. Let Emily and Clark think you're folding." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Won't that make her bolder?" Lisa's grin was a sliver of ice. "Exactly. The bolder she gets, the sloppier. Clark's ego will push her to overreach, and that's when we strike." She tapped her pen, each click a countdown. "I need full access to your financials, every account, every transaction going back 5 years. Emily's not hiding yet, but she will. And when she does, I'll be waiting." Jake handed over a USB drive with bank statements, tax returns, and mortgage records. The house on Capitol Hill, paid off 3 years ago, was his pride. Every brick earned through late nights coordinating freight in the rain-soaked ports of Puget Sound. Emily had called it their dream, but her dream seemed to involve spa weekends and a yoga instructor named Kevin. Jake had noticed the signs, her late-night texts, the sudden interest in wellness retreats, the way she'd started locking her phone. He hadn't confronted her, not out of fear, but because he wanted proof. Now, Lisa was his proof machine. Kevin's the weak link, Lisa said, as if reading his mind. She'd already done her homework. Emily's been funneling money to him through a shell company, RC Wellness. It's registered as a consulting business, but it's a front. Spa trips, a leased Porsche, even a deposit on a Napa Valley condo. All paid from your joint account. Jake's stomach twisted. "How'd you find that?" he asked. Lisa shrugged. Her nonchalance practiced. "Public records, a few calls, and a friend at the DMV who owes me. Point is, Emily's not as clever as she thinks. Neither is Clark." Jake leaned back, the leather chair creaking. "So we let her keep spending?" Lisa nodded. "For now. Every dollar she moves is a breadcrumb. We're building a trail that'll lead a judge straight to fraud." She flipped open her laptop, pulling up a spreadsheet of transactions. "Here's a $12,000 charge for a business retreat in Miami. 2 plane tickets, 1 in Kevin's name. Here's $5,000 for a consulting fee to a wellness brand that doesn't exist. And this," she pointed to a $15,000 wire transfer, "went to a crypto wallet. Guess who's been posting about Bitcoin on Instagram?" Jake's jaw clenched. "Kevin, the yoga guru with a man bun and a feed full of motivational quotes." Emily had introduced him at a charity gala. All smiles and, "He's helping me find balance." Jake had shaken his hand, ignoring the too long grip, the too bright grin. Now that grin was costing him thousands. "What's the end game?" he asked. Lisa closed her laptop, her gaze steady. "We don't just block her claim. We expose her. Clark's got a history of skating on ethical ice, conflict of interest cases, unreported ties to clients. I've got a file on him thicker than a phone book. Emily's his latest mistake, and we'll make sure it's his last." The plan was simple but ruthless. Let Emily and Clark build their case, all while Lisa gathered evidence. Mediation would be a trap dressed up as surrender. Lisa would file soft discovery requests, nothing to spook them, while digging into RC Wellness's financials. "If there's a single misstep," she said, "a hidden account, a forged receipt, I'll find it. And when I do, Emily's claim collapses. Clark's reputation goes with it." Jake felt a spark of something he hadn't in months. Not anger, not hope, but clarity. "You sure this isn't personal?" he asked, half joking. Lisa's smile was a razor's edge. "Oh, it's personal. But personal makes me precise." She stood, signaling the meeting's end. "Go home, Jake. Act like nothing's changed. Let Emily think she's winning. I'll call when it's time to pull the trigger." Jake rose, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm like a promise. As he stepped into the elevator, the weight of the envelope in his jacket seemed lighter. Emily had started this war, but Lisa was about to end it. Back at home, Emily was in the kitchen, humming as she scrolled through her phone. She looked up, her smile practiced. "You're home early," she said, a hint of suspicion in her voice. Jake shrugged, hanging his jacket. "Yeah, slow day." He caught her glance at the envelope, still poking out of his pocket. She didn't ask about it, but her eyes lingered. "By the way," she said, casual as ever, "I'm meeting Richard tomorrow. He says mediation's the smart move. Cheaper for both of us." Jake nodded, pouring himself a coffee. "Sure," he said. "Let's keep it clean." Emily's shoulders relaxed, her smugness returning. She thought he was beaten, a tired man too broken to fight. She didn't know Lisa Thorne was already circling, a shark smelling blood. That night, Jake sat in his study, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. He opened his laptop, pulling up Emily's Instagram. Her latest post was a selfie with Kevin, captioned, "Chasing balance, finding freedom." The comments were full of heart emojis, but Jake saw something else. A new watch on Kevin's wrist, glinting under the sun. He recognized the brand. Cost more than his monthly mortgage. He closed the laptop, his pulse steady. Emily was building her castle on sand, and Lisa was about to bring the tide. Jake didn't need to shout or rage. He just needed to wait. And waiting, he realized, was the sharpest weapon of all. Emily's laughter sliced through the Capitol Hill house, sharp and careless, like glass breaking in another room. She was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice dripping with triumph as she bragged to a friend. "Richard says it's a slam dunk. Jake's too stubborn to fight, and I'll have the house by summer." Jake stood in the hallway, unseen, his pulse steady as he cataloged every word. The past week had been a masterclass in restraint. Jake Collins, the 45-year-old logistics manager who'd spent decades navigating Seattle's chaotic ports, was no stranger to waiting out storms. But this was different. Emily's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a calculated heist, and she thought he was too tired to notice. She was wrong. Lisa Thorne, his lawyer and Richard Clark's ex-wife, had turned their plan into a chessboard, and Jake was learning how to play. He'd followed Lisa's instructions to the letter. Act defeated, agree to mediation. Let Emily's confidence swell like a balloon ready to pop. Every morning, he left for work as usual, his pickup rumbling out of the cul-de-sac. Every evening, he returned to Emily's practice smiles and probing questions. "You're awfully quiet," she'd say, fishing for cracks in his armor. Jake would shrug, sip his coffee, and say, "Just thinking." She'd nod, satisfied, her eyes gleaming with the smugness of someone who thought they'd already won. But behind the scenes, Lisa was weaving a net. Her office became Jake's second home, a war room of spreadsheets and legal pads. "Emily's sloppy," Lisa said during one late-night meeting, her desk littered with takeout containers. "She's been moving money faster since you agreed to mediation." She slid a printout across the table. A $9,000 charge for a wellness conference in Napa Valley, booked through RC Wellness, Emily's sham company. The invoice listed two attendees, Emily Caldwell and Kevin Brooks. Jake's jaw tightened. Kevin, the yoga instructor with a grin like a used car salesman, was living large on Jake's dime. "She's not even hiding it," Jake said, his voice low. Lisa's eyes glinted. "She doesn't think she has to. Clark's probably telling her the judge will buy her sacrificed career story. But this," she tapped the invoice, "is fraud. And fraud doesn't get alimony." Lisa had already traced more transactions. $7,000 for a leased Porsche in Kevin's name, $4,500 for a consulting fee to a Shell LLC, even $2,000 for a couple's spa package in Bellevue. All from the joint account Jake thought they'd closed years ago. Emily had kept it active, a quiet siphon for her new life. The audacity burned, but Jake didn't flinch. Lisa's plan was a slow burn, and he trusted her precision. "We need her to make one big mistake," Lisa said, leaning back in her chair. "Something undeniable. Clark's lazy, he won't check her work. If she slips, we'll have her." Jake nodded, his mind flashing to Emily's latest Instagram post. Her and Kevin on a yacht, captioned "Freedom tastes better with salt air." The watch on Kevin's wrist, $6,000, Jake estimated, glinted like a middle finger. He'd sent the screenshot to Lisa, who'd replied with a single word. Perfect. Lisa's strategy was twofold. First, she filed soft mediation papers, vague and non-confrontational, to lull Emily and Clark into complacency. The documents promised mutual resolution and fair asset division, words that made Emily preen like a peacock. She'd even started redecorating the house, ordering a new rug with a quote stitched in cursive. "Strong women build their own futures." Jake saw it delivered, said nothing, and texted Lisa. She's spending like it's hers. Lisa's response was immediate. Good. Keep her comfortable. The second part was quieter, deadlier. Lisa ordered a forensic audit of their joint accounts, digging back 7 years. She didn't need the data yet. She needed the paper trail. Every transaction, no matter how small, was a potential landmine. Emily's not just spending, Lisa explained. She's misrepresenting. That wellness conference is a weekend at a vineyard. The consulting fee? Straight to Kevin's crypto wallet. If we prove intent to deceive, her claim's dead. Jake raised an eyebrow. And Clark? Lisa's smile was a blade. He's got a history of overlooking client lies. I've got a friend at the state bar who'd love to revisit his file. Jake marveled at her calm. Lisa wasn't just fighting for him. She was settling a score. Clark had burned her years ago, leaving her to rebuild after a brutal divorce. Now she was a predator in a gray suit, and Emily was her prey. You're enjoying this, Jake said, half accusing. Lisa didn't deny it. Justice is my cardio, she quipped, then grew serious. But this isn't just about me. Emily's playing you for a fool, Jake. She doesn't get to walk away with your life. The next day, Emily came home from a lunch with Clark, her cheeks flushed with victory. She stood at the kitchen counter, sipping kombucha like it was champagne. Richard's not impressed with your lawyer, by the way, she said, her voice light but pointed. Lisa Thorne? He says she's a document pusher, not a litigator. Jake didn't look up from his newspaper. Good, he said, turning a page. Means he's not worried. Emily stared, a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but she shook it off. She thought she was the hammer, Jake the nail. She didn't know Lisa was forging a guillotine. That evening, Jake drove to a diner on the edge of town, where Lisa waited in a corner booth. She slid a folder across the table. Found something, she said, her voice low. Inside was a notarized document. RC Wellness's operating agreement, signed by Emily and witnessed by Clark. One clause stood out. Any misrepresentation of funds could dissolve the company and revert assets to the original account holder. Jake. She didn't read the fine print, Lisa said. Neither did Clark. Jake's pulse quickened. This is for the house? Lisa nodded. If she lies about RC Wellness in court, the LLC reverts to you. She's borrowing her victory, Jake. And we're about to call the loan. He left the diner with a fire in his chest. Emily was at home, scrolling through furniture catalogs, planning her new life. She didn't notice Jake's quiet stare, didn't hear the gears turning. Lisa's net was tightening, and Emily was dancing toward the trap. Jake didn't need to confront her, not yet. The best revenge wasn't loud. It was patient, precise, and already written in the fine print she'd never bothered to read. Emily strode into the Seattle courthouse like she was walking a red carpet, her heels clicking a rhythm of assured victory. Her pearl necklace, Jake's gift from their 10th anniversary, gleamed against her tailored pink blazer, a trophy of her supposed endurance. But Jake saw the truth. She wasn't here to negotiate. She was here to perform. The courtroom buzzed with more spectators than Jake expected, whispers rippling like static. Word of the Caldwell divorce had spread through Seattle's legal circles, fueled by rumors of Richard Clark's latest high-stakes case. Jake, now 45 and weathered by years of logistics work, sat quietly at the defendant's table, his thin folder of notes unopened. Beside him, Lisa Thorne was a study in restraint. Black suit, no jewelry, her legal pad untouched. In her hand, a small metal case glinted like a promise of ruin. Clark, across the aisle, adjusted his cufflinks and cracked a joke to the bailiff about tea times. Emily dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue, her pout practiced for the gallery. Judge Ellen Watson entered, her crow's feet deepening as she scanned the docket. Caldwell versus Caldwell, she announced, her voice flat, like someone who'd heard every sob story twice. Spousal support and asset division. Let's proceed. Clark rose, his smile a polished weapon. Petitioner is ready, Your Honor. Lisa's response was quieter, sharper. Respondent is ready. The air tightened, and Jake felt it, the moment before a storm breaks. Clark opened with Emily on the stand, her testimony a carefully rehearsed tragedy. I gave up my career for Jake, she said, her voice trembling just enough. I supported him emotionally, managed our home, sacrificed my dreams. She described Jake's coldness, how he'd shut her out after long shifts, how their last anniversary left her invisible. Her tears welled but never fell, a masterclass in manipulation. Clark nodded solemnly, submitting a support plan that demanded half of Jake's pension and the Capitol Hill house. Mrs. Caldwell deserves restitution for her contributions, he declared, letting the word hang like incense. Jake watched, his face a mask. Emily's story was a lie spun from half-truths, each word a brick in her castle of entitlement. She didn't mention the Napa Valley weekends with Kevin, her yoga instructor lover, or the thousands siphoned from their joint account. Clark's confidence was palpable, but Jake saw the flaw. He hadn't checked Emily's math. Lisa had. Your Honor, Lisa said, standing. We'd like to present evidence. She unlocked the metal case, producing 3 folders, one for the judge, one for Clark, one for the clerk. The room stilled as she began. Mrs. Caldwell, can you confirm a $9,000 expense for a wellness conference in Napa Valley, charged to the joint account? Emily nodded, unfazed. Yes, it was for networking. Lisa's pen scratched her pad. And the second attendee, Kevin Brooks? Was he also networking? Emily's smile faltered. He's my business partner, she said, her voice thinning. Lisa didn't blink. Interesting, because the invoice lists it as a romantic getaway package for 2. She slid a document to the judge. The payment came from Mr. Caldwell's account, without his approval. Clark shifted, his fingers twitching toward the folder. Lisa kept going, her voice calm but relentless. We also have a $7,000 lease for a Porsche in Mr. Brooks' name, $4,500 for a consulting fee to a non-existent LLC, and $15,000 wired to a crypto wallet linked to Mr. Brooks. All from RC Wellness, Mrs. Caldwell's company, funded by marital assets. Emily's face drained of color, her tissue crumpling in her fist. Clark leaned forward, his voice tight. This is irrelevant, Your Honor. But Judge Watson was already reading, her brow arched. Lisa pressed on. Your Honor, we believe these transactions show a pattern of financial misrepresentation. But there's more. She pulled a single page from her folder. This is a voice memo sent by Mrs. Caldwell to a friend, dated 3 weeks ago. She tapped her phone, and Emily's voice filled the room, clear and vicious. Jake's a stubborn old fool. Richard will bury him. I'll be in Napa by fall, living the life I deserve. Gasps echoed. Emily's mouth opened, then closed. That's not. I didn't mean, she stammered. Lisa handed the judge a certified transcript. The sender ID is Mrs. Caldwell's. The friend forwarded it voluntarily. Judge Watson's eyes narrowed. Exhibit entered, she said, her tone clipped. Clark's jaw tightened, his cufflinks forgotten. Emily looked at him, desperate, but he was staring at the folder like it might bite. Lisa wasn't done. Mr. Clark, she said, turning to him. Are you in good standing with the state bar? Clark blinked. Of course. Lisa's smile was a scalpel. And you disclosed all conflicts of interest? Because RC Wellness shares a registered agent with a company you represented in a fraud case 2 years ago. You didn't recuse yourself. She slid another document forward, an old deposition where Clark had been sanctioned for similar oversights. This suggests a pattern, Your Honor. We request a review of counsel's conduct. The room froze. Emily's breath hitched, a choked sound of panic. Clark's face reddened, his voice rising. This is a stunt. But the judge wasn't listening. She leaned back, folding her hands. "Well," she said, "this just got interesting." She called a 10-minute recess, but the damage was done. Emily sat, her pearls dull against her blazer, her performance shattered. Clark paced, whispering furiously to her. But she just nodded, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Jake leaned back, arms crossed, his silence louder than any outburst. He caught Emily's glance, her disbelief raw and unguarded. She'd thought him weak, a man to be fleeced. She didn't know Lisa had spent weeks building this trap, every document a wire in the net now closing around her. As the recess ended, Lisa closed her case with a soft click. "We're not done," she murmured to Jake. He nodded, his pulse steady. Emily had walked into this courtroom a queen. She'd leave it a cautionary tale. Emily's defeat was quiet, like a tide pulling back to reveal wreckage. She sat alone in the Seattle courtroom, her once perfect blazer creased, her pearls dulled by the fluorescent glare. The judge's gavel had fallen, and with it, her carefully crafted illusion crumbled. The hearing resumed after the recess, but the air had shifted. Jake Collins, the 45-year-old logistics manager who'd spent years outsmarting Seattle's port chaos, watched from the defendant's table, his face unreadable. Lisa Thorne, his lawyer, stood poised, her black suit a silent warning. The metal case on the table was closed now, its contents already unleashed. Across the aisle, Emily stared at her hands, her tissue shredded. Richard Clark, her attorney, fumbled with his notes, his earlier swagger replaced by a sheen of sweat. The gallery whispered, sensing blood in the water. Judge Ellen Watson leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Let the record reflect significant irregularities in the petitioner's financial disclosures," she said, her eyes flicking to Emily. "Deliberate concealment of marital assets, misrepresentation of expenditures, and material omissions under oath." Emily flinched, her knuckles whitening. The judge continued, her tone sharpening. "As to Mr. Clark's representation, evidence of undisclosed conflicts and procedural breaches compels me to refer this matter to the State Bar for investigation." A choked gasp escaped Emily. She looked to Clark, expecting rescue, but he was rigid, his eyes fixed on the judge's bench. Jake caught the moment, her realization that she was alone. Lisa had predicted it. "Clark will save himself first," she'd said. Now it was happening. The judge's final ruling was a hammer. "The spousal support claim is denied in full," Watson declared. "Furthermore, the transfer of the marital home to RC Wellness LLC is subject to review. Any assets tied to misrepresented funds will revert to the original account holder, Mr. Caldwell." Emily's head snapped toward Jake, her eyes wide with disbelief. The Capitol Hill house, her trophy, wasn't hers. Lisa had buried a clause in the LLC's operating agreement. Any fraud voided Emily's custodial tenancy. The house belonged to Jake's company, and Emily was a guest who'd just been evicted. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The gallery murmured, a local legal blogger typing furiously. Seattle Legal Watch would later headline, "Divorce Shark Sunk by Ex-Wife's Trap." Lisa gathered her files, her movements precise. Jake stood, buttoning his jacket. As they passed Emily's table, she whispered, "This isn't fair." Her voice was small, stripped of its sugar. Jake didn't respond. Fair? She'd siphoned his savings, mocked him in voice memos, planned her future with Kevin, her yoga instructor lover, on Jake's dime. Fairness had left the room long ago. Outside, the courthouse steps were slick with spring rain. Lisa checked her watch, unfazed by the reporters circling like gulls. "They'll eat Clark alive," she said, almost to herself. Jake nodded, the weight of the last month's lifting. "You didn't just win," he said. "You rewrote the game." Lisa's smile was faint but real. "I owed him that," she said, her eyes distant. "But you deserved better." They parted without fanfare, no high fives, just a nod. Professionals leaving a battlefield. Jake drove home, the city blurring past. The house was quiet, Emily's new rug still in its box by the door. Strong women build their own futures. He almost laughed. She tried to build hers on lies, and Lisa had torn it down with paper and patience. Emily had moved out that week, her belongings hastily packed after the ruling. She'd texted once, a single line, "You planned this." Jake hadn't replied. He didn't need to. The fallout was swift. Emily's RC Wellness collapsed under a fraud investigation, its accounts frozen. Kevin vanished, his Instagram dark after a repossessed Porsche made local news. A mutual friend, Sophie, sent Jake screenshots of Emily's group chat, her gloating replaced by panic. How did he know? How did SHE know? Sophie added a note. "She went too far, Jake. I'm sorry." He deleted the messages, feeling no triumph, only clarity. Lisa called a week later, her voice brisk. "Clark's facing a bar hearing. Emily's trying to sell the rug on eBay. You good?" Jake was in his pickup, parked at a trailhead in the Olympic Mountains. The peaks loomed, dusted with snow. "Yeah," he said. "I'm good." He hung up, stepping into the crisp air. The forest smelled of pine and earth, a world away from courtrooms and betrayal. Jake didn't gloat. He didn't need to. Emily had thought him a mark, a tired man to be cashed out. She'd forgotten the first rule of logistics. Know your supply chain. Every move she made, every spa trip, every wire to Kevin's crypto wallet, had been a link in a chain Lisa forged into a noose. Emily's signature on RC Wellness's papers, her voice memo, her smugness in the kitchen, they'd built her own downfall. Jake had just watched it happen. He hiked a mile, his boots crunching on gravel. At a lookout, he stopped, the mountains stretching endless before him. He slipped off his wedding ring, tucking it into his pocket. It wasn't anger that drove him here, or even victory. It was peace. Emily had tried to steal his life, but she'd only revealed her own emptiness. The house was his again, the pension untouched, his future unwritten. Lisa's justice hadn't just won, it had set him free. As he turned back, his phone buzzed. A news alert from Seattle Legal Watch. Attorney Richard Clark suspended pending ethics probe. Jake swiped it away. The mountains didn't care, and neither did he. Emily's war was over, and the only casualty was her pride.